Korea and Kazakhstan are set to strengthen their supply chain cooperation, especially for critical minerals, following bilateral talks between Presidents Yoon and Tokayev in Astana. A 4.8 magnitude earthquake strikes the nation's southwestern Buan-gun County in Jeollabuk-do Province, the strongest to hit the country this year. No serious injuries have been reported, though some damage has been. BTS member Jin completed his military service today, the very first among his bandmates to be discharged. Excitement is mounting among his fans, the BTS Army worldwide. It's June 12, 2024. This is Newscenter. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. President Yoon Suk-yeol wrapped up his summit with Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev around an hour and a half ago. Kazakhstan is President Yoon's second stop of his three-nation tour of Central Asia, as he also rolls out a new strategy for the region called the K-Silk Road Initiative. To hear more about the main outcomes of the summit, we connect live with our correspondent Woo Soo-young in Astana. Soo-young, the South Korean and Kazakh leaders held a joint press conference after their summit and a signing session of bilateral deals. What were the main agreements?
Good evening, Tongmin. So as you said, the two leaders oversaw the signing of MOUs, 11 MOUs to be exact, following their summit, during which they first discussed energy cooperation with Kazakhstan to continue supplying South Korea with uranium and crude oil, and consider the possibility of increasing uranium supplies. They also agreed to cooperate on power generation, with South Korea seeking to help its firms secure power plant modernization and renewable energy projects in Kazakhstan. Also, as South Korea is in need of critical minerals to back its foremost high-tech industries, such as semiconductors, the two sides struck a deal to foster partnerships across the entire cycle of exploration, mining, and smelting of major minerals, including lithium. They will also provide opportunities for South Korean firms to participate in prioritized fields of development and production of minerals. Further deals will support collaborations on Kazakhstan's national infrastructure projects. The summit also laid the groundwork for future-oriented cooperation through knowledge sharing for development policies and increasing the training and exchanges of talent in science, technology, and ICT. To jointly respond to climate change, Seoul and Astana will cooperate on greenhouse gas reduction projects and forestry as well. People-to-people exchanges was another focal point, with Kazakhstan being home to some 120,000 ethnic Koreans. The two sides agreed to boost exchanges in culture, tourism, education, and sport, and resume direct flights from Astana to Incheon. As they strengthen solidarity on various fronts, Seoul and Astana also discussed regional and global security. They called for the denuclearization of North Korea, deeming it a necessary step for global peace and stability, and urging the regime to cease its provocations. Kazakhstan, with its own history of nuclear disarmament, supported President Yoon's audacious initiative of offering economic benefits for the North denuclearization.
And this also comes as the Yoon administration launches its new K-Silk Road Initiative. What is the significance of Seoul's outreach to Central Asian countries?
Right, so being at the heart of the ancient Silk Road, Central Asia has long been a crucial link connecting East Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. And since gaining independence from the former Soviet Union in 1991, the 5 Central Asian countries, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan, they've been forming an economic zone based on their shared history and culture. More than 15 times the size of the Korean Peninsula in terms of land, and with a population of 80 million, Central Asia holds significant potential as an emerging consumer market. And of course, its abundance of oil, gas, and critical minerals presents vast opportunities for cooperation, particularly in advanced tech industries. So despite the steady growth of economic cooperation between Korea and Central Asia since 1992, the full potential of their trade and exchanges remain untapped. So President Yoon's three-nation tour this week is the first step towards stronger collaboration with these countries, as well as assisting them in development and increasing cultural exchanges, given the surmountable size of the ethnic Korean population across Central Asia.
All right, thanks for keeping us updated, Soo-young. Meanwhile, pundits believe the time is right for efforts to enhance strategic cooperation between South Korea and Central Asia, especially amid the current climate of geopolitical uncertainty. Our Park Go-nu covers their thoughts.
South Korea aims to strengthen its economic cooperation with Central Asian countries that possess rich energy reserves and natural resources. Those countries include Turkmenistan, which has the world's fourth largest natural gas reserve, and Kazakhstan, which ranks 12th in the world for oil, according to a recent report by the Korea International Trade Association. And according to one expert, countries in Central Asia have even bigger potential.
They have abundant minerals including uranium, chromium, titanium, and more. Those countries also have a stable supply chain to export these resources. There are still lots of undiscovered resources in the Caspian Sea, and as the situation in the Middle East is unstable, we need a new stable source of crude oil, and Kazakhstan can be it.
The expert added that a growing population and GDP also make Central Asia attractive. Despite this, economic exchanges between South Korea and Central Asia have been comparatively small. According to a recent report by Kita, the value of imports from Central Asia to South Korea came to around $3.6 billion in 2023, down 25.3% on year. The total investment input to countries in Central Asia from Seoul from 1980 through 2023 was $3.8 billion. That's only about 2% of the total investments in the U.S. during the same period. An expert gave his explanation as to why exchanges have been so limited.
First of all, geography is a barrier for us because we are not immediate neighbors. And second of all, I think geopolitics is not in our favor because Korea is divided and the Central Asian countries are landlocked and surrounded by countries which are sanctioned by the West.
And that's why President Yoon Suk-yeol is currently in Central Asia to strengthen economic relationships with countries there.
It's very important for leaders to come together, to be in the same room and to talk about agendas of both sides. For example, for Kazakhstan, it is very important to switch from resource-based development to a more value-added version of production, industrial, building industrial facilities, etc. Collaboration is the key for both sides to succeed in very important venture because we are living in a very difficult world.
Several MOUs that could bolster economic partnerships between Korean countries in Central Asia have already been signed during President Yoon's visit. Watchers will be focusing on whether South Korea can broaden economic cooperation even further, particularly for energy and natural resources. Park Go-nu, Arirang News.
This morning, a 4.8 magnitude earthquake struck the county of Buan in Jeollabuk-do Province. While no serious injuries have been reported, the authorities warn of lasting aftershocks in the coming days. Our Lee Si-hoo reports.
A magnitude 4.8 earthquake hit Buan-gun County in Jeollabuk-do Province on Wednesday morning at 8:26. The quake struck at an estimated depth of 8 kilometers. This was the strongest earthquake detected in the country since a 2017 quake in Pohang. It's also the first time a quake stronger than magnitude 4 has hit the province. At least 12 aftershocks have since been detected. The Korea Meteorological Administration has warned that potential tremors may occur over the next several days. No serious injuries have been reported thus far, but over 290 citizens filed reports about tremors with the fire and emergency authorities. Some reports came from the neighboring Chungcheong-do Province as well as farther north in the capital region. There were also reports of broken windows, cracked walls, and damaged fences. The Ministry of the Interior and Safety has raised the nation's disaster control alert to level 1, the first in its 3-stage system, while issuing the third highest earthquake alert in its 4-level system. The authorities continue to monitor the situation while operating an emergency response system. Meanwhile, President Yoon Suk-yeol, currently on a Central Asia tour, has called for a prompt damage assessment and an extensive safety check. Likewise, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo has urged the relevant ministries to remain alert with public safety at the forefront of all response measures. Lee Si-hu, Arirang News.
Mounting animosity here on the Korean peninsula amid North Korea's provocations have led to a rare public display of deterrence by South Korea's Navy. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung has more on the SLBM-capable 3,000-ton submarine Ahn Mu.
South Korean forces and the 3,000-ton submarine Ahn Mu get ready to launch a torpedo attack against a hypothetical North Korean submarine, which is intruding on the de facto maritime border.
적 잠수함에 대한 어뢰 공격 준비.
어뢰 공격 준비. 1번 어뢰 발사 준비 끝.
좋아. 1번 어뢰 카운트다운으로 발사.
카운트다운 발사. 발사 5초 전. 4, 3, 2, 1. 발사.
South Korea's Navy conducted the training on Tuesday with the Ahn Mu in waters off the port city of Busan. The training involved striking an enemy submarine and ship with torpedoes, as well as ground-based enemy targets using submarine-launched ballistic missiles. The drill was aimed at enhancing detection and striking capabilities amid escalating threats from North Korea, especially with continued trash balloon deliveries and missile launches.
All crew members of the Ahn Mu are at the highest level of combat readiness. If the enemy provokes us, we will destroy and punish them underwater immediately, strongly, and until the end.
The Ahn Mu is a core asset of the South's kill chain preemptive strike system, a pillar of the three-axis defense system designed to deter North Korean attacks. It's armed with torpedoes, mines, and guided missiles, and equipped with vertical launching tubes for SLBMs to strike ground targets. The submarine also features the latest noise reduction technologies and uses an air-independent propulsion system that helps it survive longer underwater. It's the second of 3 Dosan Anchangho-class 3,000-ton submarines, which are capable of carrying 50 crew members. Tuesday's training with the Ahn Mu was the first to be open to the public, involving the Navy's 3,000-ton class submarine. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
The oldest member of BTS, Jin, became the first member to finish his mandatory military service today. His bandmates, who are still serving in the military, applied for leave to celebrate his discharge from the army. Cha Yun-kyung has more.
Jin of K-pop group BTS was discharged from the army on Wednesday morning after serving as an assistant instructor in the 5th Infantry Division's boot camp. As soon as Jin walked out of the camp, he saluted a small number of fans and reporters and then greeted other members of BTS who had taken military leave to celebrate his discharge. Suga was the only member missing as he's performing alternate service. On Thursday, Jin is scheduled to attend 2024 Festa at Jamsil Indoor Gymnasium in Seoul and meet with the BTS Army fandom to celebrate the 11th anniversary of the boy band's debut. Jin is expected to give out hugs to up to 1,000 fans at the first part of the event, amid other programs for the Army later. Expectations for BTS comeback as a group are growing after Jin completed his military duty. Among other BTS members still serving in the military, J-Hope will be the next to be discharged in October. Cha Yun-kyung, Arirang News.
Elsewhere, the World Bank has revised upward its growth projection for the world economy on prospects of steady U.S. market expansion. Kim Bo-kyung has the details.
A rosier global growth outlook for this year. The World Bank has projected the global growth outlook for 2024 to be at 2.6%, expecting the global economy to stabilize for the first time in 3 years. This is an upgrade from its previous prediction of 2.4% made in January, and the agency further expects global growth to edge up to an average of 2.7% in 2025 and 2026.
We see after 3 years consecutive weakness in terms of growth, we will see stable growth this year. Growth is going to be around 2.6%. And in fact, next year, we are expecting a little bit of a pickup.
After a 19, the global economy has been expanding steadily since 2021 as the world recovered from the impact of the pandemic. Yet the World Bank pointed out that global growth remains weak compared to past standards, as there had been an average of 3.1% annual growth in the decade before COVID-19. It is worth noting that the revised forecast also owes much to the growth in the U.S. economy, while prospects for the world's poorest nations are worrying. The agency forecasts the U.S. economy to expand 2.5% this year, the same as last year, but up sharply from the bank's previous prediction of just 1.6% in January. Meanwhile, developing economies are projected to grow 4% on average this year, slightly slower than in 2023, with the World Bank highlighting their punishing levels of debt service and constricting trade possibilities. The World Bank, in fact, has downgraded its forecast in 3 out of 4 low-income economies since January. Global inflation is expected to drop to 3.5% this year and 2.9% in 2025. But with a slower than expected pace of decline, many central banks are forecast to remain cautious over lowering interest rates. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
The local labor market appears to be cooling. Employment in May expanded at the slowest pace in well over 3 years. Our economics correspondent Moon Hae-ryun covers the latest findings.
South Korea's job market slowed in May with a national holiday affecting results. According to Statistics Korea on Wednesday, employment grew by just 80,000 people compared to the same month last year, with a total of 28.92 billion people in jobs. And despite the employment rate for 15 to 64-year-olds reaching an all-time high at 70%, that figure represents the lowest growth seen in over 3 years since February 2021. The agency attributed the decline to the fact that Buddha's birthday fell during the week of measurement this year, as the data is collected during the week in which the 15th falls every month. Buddha's birthday in South Korea is celebrating using the lunar calendar, so the date differs every year. This year, it happened to fall on the 15th. A spokesperson explained that other factors could have come into play behind this decline in job growth.
Following the end of the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a high accumulation in the number of employed people, so this is continuing to act as a base effect.
The job market has seen fluctuations over the past few months, with over 300,000 more people in employment on year in January and February. There was a dip below the 200,000 mark in March before a recovery in April. Employment in the manufacturing sector has been booming due to an upturn in the semiconductor industry, with 38,000 more people hired on year. Other sectors that also saw an upswing were the food and hospitality sectors. However, the retail sector has been seeing a decline in employment for some time now, and last month was no exception, with a decline of 73,000 on year posted as the industry becomes more automated. With South Korea's aging population, the number of people in employment aged over 60 years old has continued to increase. 265,000 more people in that age group were in jobs in May this year compared to last year. But decline continued for those between 15 and 29 years old, as well as for those in their 40s. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Professors at 40 medical schools across the country are due to decide whether they will join junior doctors for a walkout next week against the government's medical school quota expansion. A meeting held on Wednesday afternoon will decide whether the Medical Professors Association of Korea will take a day off next Tuesday in solidarity with the Korea Medical Association. In a separate move, medical professors at some of the largest university hospitals have decided to take days off. Professors at 8 hospitals under the Catholic University of Korea will not be taking patients on the 18th, while professors at Seoul National University and Yonsei University's Severance Hospital. Divisions voted to hold an indefinite walkout starting next Monday and the 27th, respectively. After unilaterally electing chairs of key committees, the main opposition party held a meeting of the Legislation and Judiciary Committee on Wednesday to push through key legislation. The first meeting of a committee under the 22nd National Assembly put forward a bill for a special investigation into the death of a young Marine last year, which the previous assembly had turned down following a presidential veto. The committee's Democratic Party Deputy Chairman Kim Seung-won stated that he will seek to forward the bill to a plenary session by early July. The ruling People Power Party, which did not attend the meeting, plans to advise President Yoon to exercise his veto power if the new assembly passes the bill. The prosecution on Wednesday indicted main opposition Democratic Party Chairman Lee Jae-myung for alleged third-party bribery involving a private firm's unauthorized remittance of money to North Korea 5 years ago. The Suwon District Prosecutor's Office indicted Lee without detention on accusations that he was involved in the illegal transfer of money from the company Sangbangul to North Korea back in 2019 while serving as the governor of Gyeonggi-do Province. Prosecutors allege the firm made the transfer on behalf of Lee and the province. This additional charge puts the DP leader under 4 ongoing trials. In response, Lee called the case a sham, while the DP called it a politically motivated oppression against the opposition. In football, South Korea on Tuesday beat China 1-0 in a qualifier for the 2026 World Cup. Lee Gang-in got the game's only goal. Lee Seung-jae has the highlights.
Playing in front of a sold-out crowd at the Seoul World Cup Stadium on Tuesday night, the South Korean national football team faced off against China for their final match of the second round of the Asian qualification for the 2026 World Cup. South Korea had already clinched a spot in the third round, but needed a win to guarantee being one of the top 3 seeds in Asia to avoid facing Japan or Iran in the next round. Despite dominating China in possession, the match was scoreless after the first 45 minutes. However, just past the hour mark, PSG's Lee Gang-in ran onto a loose ball in the penalty area and fired a scorcher past the Chinese goalkeeper, giving South Korea the 1-0 lead and the win. Lee has scored 3 goals in the past 2 matches and 10 in his last 15 internationals. The win for South Korea means they'll remain the 3rd highest-ranked Asian team in the FIFA rankings and avoid Japan and Iran in the 3rd round of qualification. Japan and Iran are currently 18th and 20th in the FIFA ranking, with South Korea coming into Tuesday's match ranked 23rd, but only marginally ahead of Australia in 24th place using FIFA's points-based ranking system. Tuesday night's win helps the Taeguk Warriors keep the 3rd highest ranking in Asia. The June FIFA rankings will be unveiled later this month and will determine the seeding for the 3rd round, where 18 qualifying teams from the 2nd round will be drawn into 3 groups of 6. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The temperature in Gangneung, where there have been tropical nights for 2 days, rose to nearly 35 degrees Celsius today. Tomorrow morning, the temperature in Gangneung is forecast to be 24 degrees, so it's possible that there will be another tropical night. As the early heat wave continues, the number of people suffering from heat-related illnesses is increasing rapidly. Please take care of your health. The heat wave will continue until Friday, while the whole country is under clear weather. Tomorrow, the temperature in Seoul is expected to rise to the highest so far this year at 32 degrees, both tomorrow and Friday. Tomorrow will start off at around 20 degrees all over the country. Highs will be topping out at 33 in Chuncheon, Gwangju, and Gyeongju. Daejeon and Daegu, 34 degrees. There will be another rain in the Seoul metropolitan area, western Gangwon-do Province, and on Jeju Island this coming weekend. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session coming up.
Welcome. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니? 한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
So today we're gonna make this crispy Korean twice fried yum-yum chicken. Cracked black pepper, get all those ingredients in with our chicken and away from you, okay? Marker in the second fry. Starts bubbling on you. This goes in here. Green onions.
The two Koreas continue to walk a precarious tightrope with increased hostilities along the border. South Korea has forged ahead with propaganda loudspeaker broadcasts near the border for the first time in years following North Korea's trash balloon campaign, which Kim Yo-jong immediately slammed as a prelude to a very dangerous situation. All this while Seoul and Washington further boosted their joint defense posture against the North's evolving threats. For some insights into the rising hostility on the Korean Peninsula and their implications, our regular commentator and senior research fellow at the Institute for National Security Strategy, Ko Myung-hyun, is here with me in the studio. It's good to have you back.
It's good to be back.
And joining us virtually from Washington is VOA correspondent Jessica Stone. It's always great to see you.
Good evening.
All right, I want to start with you, Dr. Go. A lot has happened while you were gone. South Korea has conducted loudspeaker broadcasts for the first time since 2016, and North Korea was quick to react, flying over 300 trash balloons yet again over to the south. How do you assess the current level of inter-Korean tensions?
So when one has to evaluate the possibility of tension and the level of tension, you have to think about the possibility of escalation. So whether the recent provocation by North Koreans of sending these trash balloons could lead to some sort of response from South Korea. And the response is that it's going to be difficult for South Korea to respond to this in a way that there's no much pressure on the South Korean side to respond in kind, so to speak. So I think this was very much intentional on the part of North Korea. So Kim Yo-jong has just said that if South Korea follows up with North Korea's recent provocation, then North Korea has in store a much stronger response. This is in a way it's a message from North Korea that in a roundabout way saying that they don't want to escalate anymore, because if you escalate or we escalate more, then we have to respond with something more lethal. So from the South Korean point of view, this is very kind of like a gray zone provocation in the sense that it doesn't really cross the red line. It doesn't really put pressure on the South Korean side to take on military action or kinetic action of any kind, but then it releases a political impact on the South Korean society. So this is a very clever move on the part of North Korea, but South Korea has its own response, which North Korea cannot counter easily, which are the loudspeakers. So the chance is that the two sides will remain at this level. So there could be more trash balloons coming this way from the north in the coming weeks or even month. But then I think the frequency of such events is going to dwindle down over time. And same with the South Korean loudspeakers. So I think it's going to peter out over time, but we're going to see this time to time in the coming months.
South Korea has blared those loudspeakers after some serious events in the past, such as after North Korea's torpedo attack on South Korean warship Cheonan, and also following North Korea's nuclear tests as well. But this time around, you don't think tensions are getting that as dangerous? Well,
with the loudspeakers, before, it was in combination with other action taken by South Korea. For instance, with the sinking of the Cheonan corvette, it wasn't just the loudspeaker campaign that the South Korea used to respond to North Korean attacks, but it also came with the May 24th measures, the sanctions, in fact, against North Korea, and also led to major military naval exercises taking place in the Yellow Sea. This time around, we are only seeing loudspeaker actions.
Right, Jessica, so the two Koreas are ratcheting up hostile behaviors, blaming each other for triggering such actions. How does Washington perceive the newly flared cross-border tensions?
Well, State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller was pretty frank about how the U.S. views these trash balloons. He called them a disgusting tactic, irresponsible, childish, condemning them, and said that they should come to an end. And, Kim Jo-young has called the trash balloons sincere presents to the goblins of liberal democracy, and that is not lost in terms of its intent on the U.S. government. The longtime Korea DC analyst Bruce Klinger wrote about these trash balloons, calling them flying feces, petulant and disdainful. So pretty clear words from those analysts and government officials here in Washington about the nature of this. And of course, there is no desire on the part of Washington to see this create escalation.
So malign, destabilizing, and disgusting were some of the words used by U.S. officials to describe the trash balloon campaign. And of course, Washington does not wish to see further escalation of tensions. Dr. Go, North Korea's Kim Yo-jong immediately warned that North Korea will take new responses if South Korea continues to blare the loudspeakers and also continues to fly anti-Pyongyang leaflets across the border. What could she mean by new responses? And do you expect further provocations from the North, perhaps by seizing the opportunity of President Yoon's absence?
So there could be further escalation on the part of North Korea. It's really about opportunities that they find out in the near future to take advantage of any situation that could favor their strategic position. So if they think further escalation is going to benefit them politically, then they will do so. But then I think we are going to discuss this later on, but if indeed Russian President Vladimir Putin is going to visit Pyongyang soon, the chances that North Korea is going to use an excuse to stop this campaign, because they're not going to engage in provocation that could lead to possible escalation with South Korea while Vladimir Putin is visiting Pyongyang. So I think what Kim Yo-jong is saying is more rhetorical than real. So we have to read between the lines here. So I think Kim Yo-jong is trying to send a message to South Korea that this is what we are doing. We don't want to escalate anymore unless you continue, right? So what South Korea can do in response is, I think South Korea also wants to respond to what North Korea has done, but then at the same time, South Korea also doesn't want to escalate any further. So as I said before, chance is South Korea is going to take a more measured action, say like engage in loudspeaker actions, but less frequently. And then North Korea is likely to notice that, also essentially de-escalate the situation by sending fewer balloons in the coming weeks. So when both sides kind of understand that this is the message getting across to the other side, then essentially we have a de-escalation in the near future. And this is ironically could be Putin's business upside in the overall bigger scheme of things.
Some experts say, on a similar note, that Kim Yo-jong's verbal attacks this time around was rather weak compared to the past. So hopefully that could be an indication that North Korea won't conduct any bolder provocations. Jessica, the third round of the South Korea-U.S. Nuclear Consultative Group meeting was held in Seoul on Monday. According to reports, they've completed drafting guidelines on joint response in the event of North Korea's nuclear attack. Tell us more about this and other key points of the meeting.
Yeah, so the Pentagon says that South Korea and the United States agreed on procedures to maintain and strengthen the nuclear posture and the nuclear deterrence policy. They will make military assets, U.S. military assets, much more visible. They'll plan joint nuclear exercises with the South Korean military, and they've agreed to do tabletop exercises. This is something, of course, that all militaries do, but they're going to be doing them together in a couple of different spheres. They're going to be doing them in a joint decision-making in crisis, in interoperability, and communication. They're going to do joint nuclear and strategic planning. And the goal, of course, is to continue to integrate the ROK military into the U.S. military response to some of these provocations and scenarios that North Korea could present the peninsula. They're also going to have another round of consultations at the end of this year in Washington. So this will continue. And that's just the sort of policy level. But in the intermediary, we may see these joint tabletop exercises begin to be planned and executed.
And taking a closer look at the NCG meeting, Dr. Go, South Korea and the U.S. have agreed to develop various conventional nuclear integration options through their annual simulations and tabletop exercises, as Jessica has mentioned. How do you assess the operational effectiveness of the two allies' current nuclear deterrence system?
Well, the recent agreement likely steps to conduct more integration between the conventional and the nuclear capabilities of South Korea and the United States was very much expected from the get-go when the nuclear consultative group came into being. So many, including myself, expected the NCG to eventually conclude some sort of planning component. And then we know when NCG includes a planning, then it might become an MPG, and MPG standing for a Nuclear Planning Group. And this is very significant. The name MPG is already it already exists. It's in the context of NATO nuclear sharing scheme. And the reason why it's called MPG is because this same exact thing has taken place in the European setting. United States is providing extended deterrence with nuclear capability. The European side offers the conventional capabilities. And the two are closely integrated in any war plan that envisages some sort of threats against the European allies of the United States. So same exact steps are being taken between the United States and South Korea. And the South Korean side had been demanding this for a very long time. And there's a reason why the Kim Tae-yo, the Deputy National Security Advisor, stated that the NCG would be much, much bigger than the EDSCG that the NCG came to replace, which was the Extended Deterrence Strategic Consultative Group that was the setting or the framework in which the United States and South Korea would discuss these kind of issues. So the NCG is going to be much more effective and powerful in the future, and the reason is because the very things that we have observed today. So so even though the simulation and TTX sound at this point pretty plain because it doesn't involve exercises, this in fact is a preparatory step for actual exercises that includes scenarios in which the United States could use nuclear weapons in response to North Korean use of nuclear weapons. So everything has become more realistic in terms of war planning in the Korean Peninsula, whereas before the United States and South Korea would ignore the possibility of North Korea using nuclear weapons against the South or Japan or even the United States in certain scenarios. But now the use of North Korea's nuclear weapons has become real and is being reflected, and then it makes the entire defense posture or the combined defense posture between South Korea and the United States much more effective and realistic. And this means that we have to make it very clear here that we are not prepared for war against North Korea. We are not really raising tension against North Korea. But then by showing to the North Koreans that the combined defense posture is much more effective and stronger, it really deters North Koreans from actually using these weapons. So I think this was very much a needed step, but then I dare to say that this is the beginning of such preparation, that we're going to see more of this in the near future with more details fleshed out.
So you think South Korea and the U.S. are inching closer towards NPG, Nuclear Planning Group, which is quite similar or equivalent to NATO's nuclear sharing model?
So in the NPG case, that includes the deployment of tactical nuclear weapons. And so I wouldn't go that far today, but then we are already hearing reports that the Biden administration, which has long been opposed to the idea of raising the profile of nuclear weapons in the overall national security strategy of the United States, as well as the defense of the U.S. allies around the world, is considering expanding the role of nuclear weapons in the national security strategy. So that could, it opens a lot of options here, and then I wouldn't really put off the table the option of redeploying tactical nuclear weapons sometimes in the future.
All right, another NCG meeting is set to take place later this year, so we'll keep a close eye on that. Jessica, a U.S. National Security Council official has said that North Korea, China, and Russia are expanding and diversifying their nuclear weapons stockpiles at a breakneck speed, hinting at the possibility that the U.S. may have to increase its own. Tell us more about this, and are there any talks of a possible change in U.S. nuclear policies to counter evolving threats?
Well, I think this plays into Dr. Goh's response to your last question about expanding the ideas on the table for the U.S. government when it comes to working with allies against nuclear threats. Pranay Vadi was the senior director for Arms Control, Disarmament, and Nonproliferation at the National Security Council. He made some remarks that you just referred to at a forum recently. and essentially said that the PRC, North Korea, Russia, they're not showing any interest in arms control, so that it's really incumbent upon the U.S. and its allies to leverage arms control, but also to be prepared for the event of a true nuclear war, which, of course, we have not really had a mindset as the American people. I can speak to this, of course, of this being a possibility in the short term for decades, for at least a generation, if not more. So the Biden administration is really looking to update its nuclear weapons employment guidance. It has done some work on that and says that it needs to account for the growth and diversity of China's nuclear arsenal in particular. It needs to deter Russia and North Korea and China all at the same time from growing their own arsenals, and it reaffirms the U.S. commitment to use arms control and other tools to minimize the number of nuclear weapons around the world and the number of weapons that the U.S. needs to ensure its own objectives and those of the allies that it works with. So essentially, the U.S. is saying it may need to increase its arsenal in the future, and in the meantime, as we know on so many other levels, especially in Asia, the U.S. is increasing its alliances, its interoperability with South Korea in particular in terms of a military context. It's increasing its military conversations with Japan and trying to plus up some of its assets in the Pacific region more broadly. And so this shows that it's going to continue to leverage those partnerships in the region, but then in the long term, be mindful that if these three countries continue to build their assets, that it requires the U.S. to do so in kind.
Some might argue differently, but it's a threat not only to the U.S. and its allies, but to the entire world. And as you mentioned, the U.S. and its allies will have no choice but to adjust their defense posture and nuclear capabilities to counter growing threats from those countries. Dr. Go, Russian President Putin may visit North Korea after visiting Vietnam, which could come as early as this month, according to Russian media. Japan's NHK even says Putin's visit to Pyongyang may come as early as next week. Do you expect the trip to be materialized this time, and what sort of outcome do you expect?
So clearly the possibility of Putin reciprocating the visit that Kim Jong-un made last year to Russia has definitely increased a great deal. I think we are getting more specific dates as well as justification and also the itinerary of the President Putin around Asia. So yeah, I think it could happen very soon. But at the same, another reason why I believe that could be the case is because the Russian government has taken steps to somehow mitigate the negative impact of potential Putin's visit in North Korea by reaching out to the Korean media. Recently, President Putin gave an interview to Yonhap News Agency, and in it, Putin essentially had nice words to say about South Korea and how South Korea stayed on the sidelines in the ongoing war in Ukraine. So essentially, Russia wants to have, and have the cake and eat it too. So wants to continue to get military assistance from North Korea. And I think North Korea has made Putin's visit to the country as a prerequisite for the continuation of such assistance. And on the other hand, he also wants to somehow pressure South Korea to remain on the sidelines and not to lend a direct military assistance to Ukraine. But then I think Putin is playing fire here. There's a clear red line for South Korea. When Putin goes to North Korea, he'll have to somehow make important announcements. I think Kim Jong-un probably expects Putin to do so. And if Putin makes promises that hints at potential military technology transfers, as well as the upgrading of the partnership that both countries have right now to a level that's similar to an alliance between the two countries, a much closer relationship, not just in political or diplomatic domain, but also in the military domain. Then I think South Korean opinion about Russia is going to turn really negative, and that could essentially back the current government government's critical stance about Russia, especially in the context of the ongoing war in Ukraine. And I think it could backfire on Russia if South Korea especially takes actions by lending direct military assistance to Ukraine. I very much hope that will be the case in the near future, because I think Russia is essentially crossing a red line by agreeing to visit North Korea and have a summit with Kim Jong-un.
Well, President Putin's visit will certainly make a big splash in the regional affairs, and we'll closely monitor what the two leaders give and take. Thank you, as always, Dr. Go and Jessica, for sharing your thoughts with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
You bet.
And that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you for watching, and be sure to tune in same time tomorrow to join our conversation. Goodbye for now.